Welcome to the Job Shop Show, where we talk with the owners, suppliers, partners, and customers of custom manufacturers. Listen and learn the secrets of top-performing job shops, the tools, techniques, and backgrounds that have made them successful, all in the quest of raising the bar for custom manufacturing. I'm your host, Jay Jacobs. This episode is sponsored by Paperless Parts, connecting buyers and suppliers of custom manufactured parts. The Paperless platform is a secure, ITAR-compliant, cloud-based manufacturing system for suppliers that reduces the amount of time spent on sales, estimating, quoting, administration, and order processing. It offers seamless integration with the accounting and ERP software tools that shops already use, such as QuickBooks, E2, and JobBoss. Paperless Parts was founded with a mission to make manufacturing more accessible by streamlining the quote-to-cash process. Spend less time quoting and more time selling. Shazam! This is Jay Jacobs. Welcome to the Job Shop Show. I'm very excited to share today's conversation with you. Jamie Goettler of BTX Precision is our guest. BTX Precision is a family of precision manufacturing organizations where Jamie is Chief Revenue Officer, or in other words, he's the guy in charge of sales. BTX is a switch for Jamie. Previously, he was on the other side of the fence where he spent 23 years at MSC Industrial. We talk about who MSC Industrial is, their capabilities, and some of the services they offer that I was not aware shops might be able to access and maybe new to you too. Insights Jamie gleaned after being in over 1,000 shops, what it is like now to be working for a parts manufacturing organization from the perspective of his previous life as a shop supplier. Jamie even indulges me in a discussion on my new favorite topic, humanoid robots and their potential impact on manufacturers. People like Jamie give me such confidence in American manufacturing, and I hope our conversation inspires you. Welcome to the Job Shop Show, Jamie.
Thank you, Jay. I'm so glad to be here and looking forward to spending some time with you.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. I understand that you got in late last night and you're being a hero and pulling this off for us, so much appreciated.
Oh, no problem. It's my pleasure. Frankly, I'm used to airline delays. Anybody that travels like we do in our careers understands that's kind of goes with the job, frankly, is this kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next hour.
Maybe some of the hot sauces that you create will something you could do that would wake you up. Tell me about how you got into hot sauces.
It's interesting. I've always been a fan of spicy foods, but my daughter a couple years ago for Christmas, and it wasn't something I even knew existed, bought me a home hot sauce recipe kit and had all the ingredients to make your own hot sauces. And you could add more of certain peppers or more of different spices and so on and so forth. And it was funny, as we were approaching last Christmas, she had reminded me that I hadn't used what she had given me last Christmas, and I forgot I had it. So I went and I used it and I started making my own, and I'll never go back to buying anything off the shelf because when you make it homemade, it's really that good. So it was one of the best presents I ever got. And she'll love that we're saying this on a podcast like this, by the way.
It's awesome. So let's start from the beginning, Jamie. Who is Jamie Goettler?
Wow, it's an interesting question. There's so many different ways to answer it. I would say first and foremost, I'm a family guy, right? I have an amazing wife and two really fabulous children and a great extended family. I'm a Pittsburgher at heart, grew up here, moved away for a little bit of time to get my career started, but have moved back. And of course, by virtue of that, that makes me a Steelers fan as well. But what most people know me for is being involved in manufacturing for the past 25 years. And so I've had just an amazing opportunity to influence improvements in domestic manufacturing, whether it be in my long tenured career at MSC Industrial Supply, which I know we discussed. We'll talk about some, but also the opportunity to engage with domestic manufacturing leadership at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, and now at BTX Precision. And being on the other side of the desk, if you will, from where I was at MSC, serving and selling to machining businesses and manufacturing businesses, both in subtractive and additive. And now I'm on the other side of it. And you would think, oh, yeah, I got this covered. Oh, my God, I'm learning things every day. And I love every minute of it. So I'm a manufacturing junkie, a technology junkie in manufacturing. And I'm just couldn't be more grateful for the opportunities I have to spend time with folks like you and with customers out there.
Well, I think one of the reasons I was so excited to get you on is the fact that you have the experience now from both sides, and obviously a lot as a supplier to manufacturing. And as you said, I loved how you were always pushing for technology to
Mhm.
help manufacturing move forward. Now you're on the other side. It's the beginning of a journey. However, you're taking a lot of best practices and what you've learned and implementing them into and we'll get into this. BTX is a private equity fund firm that is buying precision manufacturing businesses and combining them to execute in a bigger sense. That's my understanding of your mission.
Yeah, looking forward to getting more into that, of course, but you outlined it pretty well.
Yeah. So let's though go back to MSC. I think MSC, everyone knows the name, but perhaps
Mhm.
people don't really understand the breadth of what MSC offers to the manufacturing industry. And you started out at the bottom in sales there, and you grew into some pretty senior leadership roles. Let's just get our arms around first MSC and maybe some of the ways that you can describe MSC that are not commonly perhaps thought of by shop owners.
Yeah. So because I've had the fortunate luck to do a lot of different things at MSC while I was there, as you just outlined, Jay, that also had me in a position where I would understand the competitive marketplace for MSC, both from a national distributor competitor perspective, medium and small, like maybe regional, and then small local. And maybe to preface the answer to the question that you just asked, I'll put it to you this way: when I started in my role at BTX a short 7 weeks ago, one of the first things I did is insisting that we get MSC involved right away. And it's
Hmm.
because they're capable of doing things and acting with technology and improving, operations really like no other out there. And
Hmm.
so, as soon as I switched those sides of the desk, one of the first calls I made was to MSC to help us improve some, we'll call specific milling operations and other machining operations to reduce cycle times, improve profitability, improve throughput, shorten lead times, those kind of things. So putting my old money where my mouth is today, I think that's the proof that MSC is doing something special. So that's the preface to it. So what is that special stuff that they're doing? So the first thing that I would say is they really have an unmatched stable of, they call them metalworking specialists. You can refer to them as application engineers,
Right.
folks that'll be there to apply improvements or suggest improvements across a multitude of brands, whether it's drills, taps, end mills, inserts, grinding wheels, bandsaw blades, metalworking fluids, fixturing setups, all of those kind of great things that machining businesses really care about and is the crux of their business. I looked, they had some 120 or 125 of these folks nationwide. And so if the listeners don't know, you probably have a metalworking specialist within stone's throw of where you are in the United States. That's the first thing.
What
Yeah.
is the background of a metalworking specialist at MSC? What do you
Yeah,
have to do to get there?
yeah, it's a diverse, there was quite a diverse background with that particular role. Some of them were former machinists, programmers, supervisors, plant managers, business owners,
Mm,
frankly, all of which with machining backgrounds at that time. Some of them came from the supplier community.
mhm.
If supplier in the industry, maybe a cutting tool supplier of some sort had some kind of a layoff, and some of the troubling economic times that have existed in the past dozen years or something like that,
Yeah.
and MSC thought they were a viable candidate, we would add them to our arsenal of folks out there that are doing these things.
So MSC is hiring experienced people, not recent college graduates, and teaching them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, that said, that's a difficult skill to find these days, and we'll talk about
Oh
skills
yeah.
gap, I'm sure, later on too. And
Yeah.
so, as much as it's difficult for machining businesses, which I know very well right now, to find really strong, skilled labor, it's also getting tough for distributors to find qualified salespeople and application folks. So before I departed MSC, had, a collaboration and partnership with the University of Tennessee, and there's some really fantastic
Hmm.
talent coming out of the university there that really
Hmm.
got, the University of Tennessee some recognition based on engaging with MSC, and MSC some recognition for engaging with the university itself. And so there's some really great things that are happening there. But yeah, those metalworking specialists are all industry folks. I think they average some 25 years of experience across the board.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Going along with that, I think the unique thing, again, from that perspective, that folks may not know as is their evaluation almost exclusively, I would say, is based on customer improvement. And so they are not evaluated largely on sales growth, on profitability, on sell more of this brand than that brand, or anything
Hmm.
like that. It's best tool for the job across all of these brands. And they're evaluated on how much cost savings they document, for their customers. And I got to tell you, when you have somebody like that in, and their pursuit is exactly what you as an end use business are looking for, man, it's a perfect
Yeah.
marriage. Yeah.
I didn't know that. So that's really powerful because incentives drive behavior, as we know. And if you are aligning those metalworking specialists with the customer like that, that is incredible.
It is. It is. And so, along with that, then, so you have this large nationwide team of very
Hmm.
capable folks. You have them, goals and objectives in squarely the right direction. And then the thing that we also did before I left, and they're still doing, obviously, that's why I called them in instantly when I left, and went to the other side of the desk, was their investment in technology and leading from the front, as it were.
Mm.
A good friend of mine and yours coined that phrase with me, and I've used it for the last 6 or so years. But that was something that MSC needed to do, is they're the largest metalworking products distributor in North America. And we needed to start leading from the front at that time when I was with the company. And the way to do that
Mm.
was to change the game. And we did
Hmm.
that first with, what's known as modal tap testing. We coined it MSC MillMax, the service where we would come in and tap, a milling tool or a milling assembly on a machine and
Hmm.
identify ideal optimal speeds, stable speeds. And it created just, a whirlwind of recognition for the company. Frankly, for me, as being part of this thing, a lot
Hmm.
of folks are asking me, I was doing webinars on engineering stuff, and I'm not an engineer, but it was such a great technology, and it's doing great things. So, we threw our hat into the ring of doing new and different things that we could introduce to the customer base that allowed them to improve throughput, become more cost competitive with other countries across the
Hmm.
world, that allowed us to reshore and then make American machining businesses as competitive as they could be globally.
I'm listening. I'm a shop owner. I'm saying I didn't know MSC would do this. I just thought they were someone I could buy cutting tools from. Let's say I've got a long running part or parts and I want to engage with MSC to see if there's some cost saving opportunities. What would I do? How do I start that?
Yeah, there's a number of different ways that I recall, and I would suspect it's still the same, 7 weeks after I departed. And that is, use the website. If you don't know who your salesperson is or don't have a salesperson, you may have a
Hmm.
salesperson that's a telesalesperson, you may have an outside salesperson, but you
Mm.
may know your metalworking specialist, but not know that they have, all of these different aptitudes and technologies at their fingertips. So the website, a phone call into their 1-800 number and said, hey, I'd love to have somebody come by and take a look at my applications. The old
And
school
you're
way of
not
getting them
bothering.
involved and take it from there.
Yeah, you're not bothering them by making that request.
Oh no, they love it because, again, that's their job. They're evaluated and performance managed based on, how they perform with customers that way.
So you talked about MSC being at the forefront of technology. What does that mean today? What are things that are maybe recently implemented? And if you can talk about them, projects that are
Mhm.
still going on that haven't been implemented, where you think they will make a big impact for the industrial supply base in the US.
Yeah, sure. So, but before I left, there were active innovations. Obviously, Milmax was the flagship.
And what is that?
To shed a little bit more light. So that's modal tap testing, and that's where
Hmm.
we take an instrumented hammer, attach an accelerometer to either a solid or an indexable milling cutter, literally tap it with this hammer
Hmm.
and evaluate the response, as it's known, that allows us through an elaborate computer program to determine what are the stable speeds that that tool and that
Mm.
holder in that machine is capable of operating. And
So
Jay,
does that, I want, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah, yeah,
does that,
yeah, yeah.
does that vary that much by machine that it's important to do this?
It does. Now, if you take a brand new, any make and model of, vertical or horizontal machining center just off the line, they're going to operate very similarly. But as soon as
Hmm.
you start running tools, and maybe one shop runs a lot of titanium and takes some big
Right.
cuts, and another shop is just running aluminum, maybe that spindle starts to act a little bit differently over time. Certainly if there's a crash, they operate. But from we'll say Haas to Akuma to Doosan to all of these, they all operate different. They have different signatures, we'll call it.
Sounds like if I'm buying a used piece of equipment, this is a no-brainer.
For a used piece of equipment, just as much as a new piece of equipment. Think of it like, one of the folks there that's leading the effort is a young guy by the name of Michael Gomez, and Michael used to refer to it as, anybody that plays guitar or knows anybody that plays guitar, the first thing they do when they pick it up to play it is they ensure that it's tuned right. And this is
Yeah, yeah.
essentially like tuning up your milling machine to be
Mm.
optimal. The interesting thing is, Jay, and I know from our backgrounds in being in machining businesses, is that there's stable speeds and non-stable speeds, and
Hmm.
sometimes in order to get to the highest stable speeds, you have to go through a bunch of chatter and breaking tools. Well, most people don't want to do that. If it
Right,
sounds bad or it breaks tools, you end up backing it down. In many
right.
many cases, there's a whole other stable zone at higher speeds that you can operate at that
And you'll never
significantly
get
can
there.
reduce. You'll never get there with just human intelligence, and
Right.
that's not a zinger on any single
Sure.
machining person or machining business. Is just the reality of it. It's human nature. Hey, that sounds bad. It's not, hey, turn it up some more. Maybe in
Right.
aluminum, people can get, like that and say, all right, what the heck? But I'm telling you, if it's Inconel or titanium or even a hardened steel, it's hard to get yourself to do that. But the test takes, Jay, it takes less than 5 minutes to know all of these answers. So, matter of
Mm.
fact, we did this 2 weeks ago at
Hmm.
a BTX business called ERA Industries in Chicago,
Yeah.
and we were working on a part for one of the larger space companies in the U.S., and we were able to reduce cycle time on this thing right now. And we haven't gone through all of the milling tools, just the most commonly used on it, from 3 hours to 2 hours. We literally reduced it by a third.
And was that by increasing the cutting speed because you were confident that that was the stable range?
That's right. Yep. And
Wow.
it was a range in a high temp alloy that most people
Wow.
wouldn't go. You're not going to travel through all of these broken tools and chatter and say,
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
turning it up, keep going, keep going, we'll find it eventually. You're afraid you're going to break a spindle of a multi-million-dollar machine.
Yeah.
Not with this. It gives you that, assurance essentially. Yep.
That's insane. That's
Yeah.
what a beautiful thing. It sort of makes me think you're driving down the road, you're going 65 and your tires shimmying a little bit, and you're like, all right,
Mhm.
well, let's put it up to 90 and we'll be okay.
That's the experts, that I was fortunate to be able to engage with. That was one of the analogies they would use. If so,
Yeah.
you're on an on ramp and you put your pedal to the metal, we'll say, and suddenly you feel it vibrating a little bit, but when you get to another speed, it's stable. I also use the analogy that my washing machine, which is two walls away, sometimes when
Mm.
it's in its spin cycle, you think
Yeah.
that there's a unbalanced load, but in actuality, there's certain RPMs that it is not comfortable with that
Hmm.
with the clothes that are in there, but it gets to a different RPM and it's just fine. It's the same kind of dynamic, we'll call it.
What other things like that is MSC
Yeah.
implementing, leading the charge?
Yeah. So we're going to come back to, Jay. You and I talked about recognizing that commercial business improvements also contribute, obviously, to economic improvements
Hmm.
in the U.S. and some homeland security benefits and some domesticating supply chain stuff. I would be remiss without adding that Oak Ridge, which is part of the Department of Energy, recognized Milmax as having the best return on investment of any cooperative research and development agreement they'd ever signed.
Wow.
which was just absolutely amazing. So the amount of money that they contributed and the amount of money that MSC contributed, and then went ahead and deployed this thing has literally resulted in millions and millions of improved profit dollars for U.S. businesses to become more competitive. It's just absolutely amazing. So I would suggest to any businesses out there to strongly consider that service. And I'm not there anymore. So, I'm telling you because it's the right
Well,
thing to do.
and you're using it yourself in your new businesses.
It was one of the first things I did for sure. Really quickly, a couple of the other things that were going on, we have with paperless parts, we had created a chat function where we have folks that are on the other side of a chat feature in a thing called TechMate. That's a CAD viewing software that allows customers with difficult features to be able to communicate directly through an ITAR secure server location with vetted US citizens on MSC side to go and search out a tool for a certain job or whatever the case might be. And we did that we introduced it or started it during COVID because folks weren't allowed on the shop floor, as you might recall. And so how can we serve to improve our customers at that time and give them the technical service they need? And this was a way in which to do it. So that's still out there and as a super cool thing. There is also that I would suggest is actually something that's not as much an innovation from a technology perspective as a different way of doing things. And MSC has this program called Machine Max Pro that essentially, if an end user buys a new machining center, just like they could buy a tooling certificate from any of the big name cutting tool manufacturers, you buy it along with the machine, you add that to the invoice price. So I'm paying $300,000 for a machine and I buy a $50,000 tooling package, and then you finance that. Well, you can do that with MSC, but you get access to all of the brands and all of the products that MSC sells. So now when you're setting up your machine, rather than just having a certificate to buy tools, you can have a certificate to buy, anti-fatigue mats, fluids, vices, fixturing equipment, anything to set up that particular area, and to be able to capitalize that along with the machine or finance it along with the machine proved to be pretty viable. And then something that was in development, that we were working on, and I can't share too much about it, but we knew that while I was at MSC, that milling made up about 40% of the cutting tool operations that were happening in the US. So that's why we started with MillMax. It made sense to have that kind of a profound influence on the way things were done. Next behind that is OD turning. And so they have something up their sleeves for OD turning that's going to be pretty exciting. And I can't wait to get my hands on it now at BTX and start to use that in the same vein to improve, whether it's throughput or speed or tool life.
Very cool. I'm going to give a plug for something that's been around for a long time, and I'm not sure if every shop owner knows about it, but the MSC vending machines. I love them as an owner.
Oh, and definitely.
Because it gave you so much more control of your tooling inventory. And I've got a funny story. We had, once we implemented it, you saw the guys who always had to have a new tool, and then the great thing was the analytics. You got to see the average cost per employee per week on tooling, and and then so let's say it was $500, and you've got a couple guys, the aberration, they're over $1,000, and it's like, okay, listen, this is not going to fly. You're spending an extra $500 a week, $25,000 a year on tooling. No, there was something though that came up that was so funny, and this guy thought he was like working the system, and I think he had maybe $25 in tooling that he'd taken out. And we're scratching our head, and what it turns out, he was stealing the tooling from the other machinists and putting it in and trying to make his numbers look.
That's unbelievable. I'm sure the vending folks at MSC have countless stories of things that they've encountered over the years. When way back, what role was I in at this time? I was just a manager managing that application engineering or metalworking specialist team. This was probably in 2013 or something. But we had a vending customer that through the touch screen folks could request their vacation days, and it was like selecting an item, and they would just select a vacation day, and it would alert HR that, hey,
Hmm.
Joe wants to take a vacation day at some point. And then they had internet radio going through the speakers through the vending machine. Like
Hmm.
they had seen all kind of different things there. It's pretty interesting.
That's yeah. I it's so basic, but rather than having a person at a tool crib, and maybe you still
Mhm.
need that for some real specialty stuff, check in and
Mhm.
out, but for the garden variety tooling, to have the vending machine, to have the employees scan their badge and take out what they need. There's no communication back and forth. Do you need this? In trying to justify it, you've got the accountability through the statistics and the
Yep.
analytics at the end of the day. And I think it's such a powerful tool. And even putting beyond the cutting tools, some of the other peripheral products that you need in the shop. Having them all there when the inventory gets low, MSC automatically knows that they need to come in and replenish. You don't have to have somebody in purchasing making orders and running out of something. Of course, that's
Mhm.
the worst thing. You've got a job that's got a due date and you don't have the tooling you need. You're hosed. So vending machines, I want to give a big plug for those.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Worth their weight in gold, no doubt about it. And, we'll be having some of those equally on our shop floors coming up soon, for sure. I agree with you.
Yep. So you've probably been in over 1,000 shops in your career. Is that a fair statement?
I would guess so, from 97, 98, when I started in this business, not knowing what an end mill or a tap was. I knew what a drill
So,
bit was. I had seen those in my
so
garage, in my dad's garage. But other than that, so since 97, I'm sure, yeah, that's about a good answer or a good number.
you've seen the good, you've seen the bad, and the pattern recognition of what the good shops are doing. And we were discussing earlier, what's good for the commercial business. And maybe you could touch upon these three things: the capacity improvements, the profitability improvements, and the skills gap. And
Mhm.
talk about those from your perspective at MSC, and then flipping it to BTX, how that
Yeah.
impacts your thinking as you build BTX.
Yeah, definitely. So I would first remark that if folks want to search for Executive Order 13806, I think it was delivered in 2018. It was in the Trump administration, that an
Hmm.
assessment of the manufacturing base, the industrial base, was done. And of course, the things that we all know today is that there's this significant skills gap. Machine tool manufacturing has largely gone overseas, and China, had, achieved a different status in comparison to the US. And it said, hey, look, things are dire and we really need to address this. And
Hmm.
part of the thing that it suggests is that we need to become more cost competitive. We need to, do a bunch of different things. I would suggest to the listening audience that if you can get your hands on Executive Order 13806, it's an unclassified document. You can Google it, find it, read it. Although it's 6 years old, it's still really great reading. The reason I said it that way, Jay, was when I was working at MSC, I found that the things that machining businesses cared about most, and that could be the largest aircraft manufacturer, or that could be the
Hmm.
smallest job shop out there. They all care about three primary things in differing orders in each place. The surveys would show what most would say, but today it's the manufacturing skills gap. How am I going to continue to make quality parts and I can't find
Mm.
skilled labor? So it was the skills gap, or skilled labor availability. It was improving profits in the face of pricing and margin compression, from their
Hmm.
customers, or from rising costs, and possibly inflation and other things. And then the ability to grow your business year over year or improve revenues. So those three things, skills gap, improving cost competitive and price competitiveness, and growing my business.
Hmm.
And so while I was, leading and participating in leading MSC's metalworking efforts, that became the cornerstone of everything that I focused on. And if I was going to introduce or work towards introducing something like MSC Millmax,
Hmm.
from the designers that created that thing, that it had to influence cost down. It had to influence throughput up, or greater revenues per hour, per shift, per
Hmm.
week, whatever the case might be. It had to improve productivity in the face of the skills gap. Because if you can't find workers, you can't snap your fingers and they're going to show up. But what if you
Yep.
can get more out of your existing workforce and your existing equipment? And that's what productivity is all about. So that became the cornerstone of any of those innovations and technologies that we talked about a minute ago. And I would proliferate that notion throughout MSC and throughout our supplier base as well, to say, look, it's not about, hey man, your price on this insert is $15.25 and I pay $14.95. You know, does it matter? Yes, it matters. Of course, everybody wants to pay the best price they can pay. But that insert, you know, really only makes up probably, you know, and other cutting tools like it, about 3% of the overall cost of manufacturing. But the cycle time and the people and the equipment costs, if you can get the most out of those, that's closer to 50 or 60% of manufacturing costs. So really make those things sing and dance. And now you're in a position where you're going to improve productivity, competitiveness, profitability, and revenue up. So that, like I said, Jay, became the cornerstone. And then when I had the fortunate opportunity to join BTX, in some of my early, you know, meetings with our executive team or our leadership team, man, I found that is all we talked about is, okay, you know, we need to get more out of this equipment. We can't be going and buying new equipment all the time. You know, are we getting the most out of these great pieces of equipment, and how can we serve to improve throughput or profitability, reduce our lead times, you know, catch up on maybe late order backlog, those kind of things. And all of these innovations were clearly focused on those three things. And so that's why I told you one of the first things I did when I got to BTX was, look, I need to create capacity, because these shops that we own are doing such a great job and their customers love them so much. They're flooding us with business. That's a good problem to have. But man, I got to get stuff out the door and I got to create even more area for us to grow. And so it's very true that those three things of skills gap or productivity in the face of the skills gap, improving profitability, and improving throughput or revenue, those are the three main things that I would guess your listening audience, those are their top three as well.
Yeah, it comes up over and over again. Not sure why, but
yeah, exactly. So, you know, what you had inquired about, or at least, you know, nudged me about a couple times on this call already, when you think about those things that make a healthy commercial business that we just, you know, mentioned ad nauseum here in the last 2 minutes, they're the very same things from a homeland security perspective. So what we learned during COVID is we were overly reliant on foreign countries. So our ability to self-sustain and take care of our own, you know, domestic supply chain, well, if we can make things quickly and we can get the most out of the people we have and the equipment we have, if we can incorporate technology, if we can, you know, create items faster and shorten the supply chain, all of those things contribute to a more robust and resilient economy, homeland security, all those kinds of things that are really beneficial to us here in the United States. And man, that's why there's like two sides of that coin, and they're both amazing sides, the commercial business improvement as well as the domestic implications as well.
I think that's one of the things that drives me, is that for the security of our country, we have to have a really robust manufacturing base. And it doesn't mean that it's strictly defense related, because the skills that you gain in the commercial sense can be transferred and vice versa. It's all part and parcel. You can't have a strong defense manufacturing base without a strong commercial manufacturing base. And what I love, what I heard you talk about, what you're doing at MSC, you know, going from 3 hours to 2 hours, that's what we need to do to make American manufacturing stronger, more robust, and to either bring the work back or make sure that the new work that's being created doesn't leave, that we give the companies the financial incentives to stay here.
Definitely, without a doubt. You know, there's some really easy to find statistics, you know, that manufacturing returns one of the greatest multipliers back to the economy. And so I think it's in the order of $2 or $3 per every dollar spent. That much money comes back to the U.S. economy. And if you think about it, you know, you throw a couple large, you know, because we care about this stuff, machining businesses in a general area, you employ all of these people, you need all of these services, you need all of these products. And then as you continue to grow, suddenly strip malls show up and gas stations show up and grocery stores show up, and people are spending the
Yeah.
money there, that they're working, for our manufacturing companies, and we work there as well. And it really helps the economy flourish, and manufacturing delivers quite a bit back, to the economy for sure.
Let's flip it. You are doing it now. You are at a
Hmm.
company called BTX. Let's get the 30,000 foot view. Who is BTX? What are you doing? And then we can drill into some details.
Yeah, so BTX Precision is the company I work for now, and I am, I'll say, blown before I even get into describing what we do and what we're attempting to do and what we're creating. A
Hmm.
just amazing group of people, whether it's our leadership team, our executive leadership team, or the business units, the platform businesses that we own and operate right now, are just fabulous people. I couldn't be more happy, and what an exciting thing! But man, what a culture shock as well. But BTX Precision is an integrated platform of manufacturing companies, and what we focus on are some of the most difficult and sophisticated work that you're going to find necessary through manufacturing part that are not needed by manufacturing partners across the US. So some of the larger aerospace, space exploration, defense, medical parts, of course, semiconductor, all of those kinds of companies turn to our BTX family of companies for some of the
Hmm.
most challenging work. And it sounds like a commercial for BTX, but Jay, I got to tell you, like we said a little bit ago, I've been in this kind of business for 27 years now, and I have not seen machines and parts like I've seen coming off of our floor when I went and visited the businesses. I'm just blown away by what we're able to do, the size of the machines, the tolerances that we're holding, the lead times that we hit, the commitments that we make and hold ourselves to is pretty extraordinary. So what we do is we try to be an extension basically of the manufacturing expertise within our customers, and that they
Hmm.
can rely on us, whether it's a production part, which we do some long run production work out of our Chicago facility known as
Hmm.
ERA Industries. We have, production and really strong prototyping possibilities out of our facility in Connecticut, not too far from you, your old stomping grounds, at a facility called Genelmec. And then some really extraordinary metal 3D printing, DMLS work happening at I3D in Oregon. So right now we have some pretty fabulous businesses that essentially can work with one another to serve their customers and our BTX customers best. Because if those businesses like ERA or Genelmec never had metal 3D printing, they now have a sister company that does it. And we vetted them out as being really strong players. And now they can work together to help their customers even more, and then in turn grow our business.
If you don't mind, and I want you to absolutely correct me if I
Mhm.
misstate or misrepresent BTX, but I want to, my own words, try to explain this for the listeners who
Mhm.
might hear the term, BTX is a platform, a PE firm. You're just buying companies, and I think the companies that you've purchased have been around for years, if not decades, right?
That's right.
Here's my understanding. BTX was created, of course, it's a business, so you're looking for a financial return ultimately. The idea is to seek in the particular niche that you've identified, which sounds like super high precision machining, some
Mhm.
skill sets that aren't out there at the average shop, and putting together these established businesses who have great employee bases, great customer bases, the skill sets, all the pieces that only come together after perhaps decades of being in business. However, by being part of BTX and now having access to perhaps some more financial resources to move more quickly into some of the emerging technologies, having the access into, as you said, sister companies, where if there's a skill set that's not at your own company, you now can reach out to either people or even exchange the work at times probably. And the way I look at this is BTX is not a company that was formed to make a quick financial hit, to buy the initial three companies and then maybe add another half dozen companies and then package it together and get a larger multiple and wash your hands, and along the way cut costs so the financials look a little better. What my sense, with knowing your background and then your CEO, Rick McIntyre, I believe is his name,
Yep,
who's got
absolutely.
an
Yes.
incredible background, is yes, if you put together some really leading companies and allow them access again to more resources and essentially take away the obstacles that may be in the way of them becoming even better companies, then you'll achieve your financial metrics over time, and you'll also achieve the mission of creating businesses with even more robust health from a financial metric perspective. They grow. The idea is not to stay the same. You
Exactly.
are making the homeland security manufacturing supply chain more robust, not only with the capabilities of your companies, but by being a leader in the integrations with companies like MSC. And then that transfers as well. As we all know, people leave companies, they go off and maybe start new companies. And that was a beautiful thing that I saw at Rapid, is the people who were part of the Rapid philosophy and how we approach business. They took it out to the world, either to companies that they started or companies that they were now employed by, and they helped them become better companies. And so my long-winded explanation, whatever, does this make sense with what I think BTX is trying to do?
It really does. It's interesting. So my responsibility at BTX, my title is Chief Revenue Officer. Essentially,
Hmm.
I'm responsible for growing the business, right? And I care a lot about doing that, of course. When I got here, I'm thinking, okay, how can I contribute to growing this business? And we're at capacity in some of these places, as I suggested before, because the customers are throwing a lot of work our way. And what we find ourselves doing, and Rick made this clear to me, and my counterpart as our CFO is a gentleman named Michael Fennerty, and
Hmm.
some other executives that we have, is to support these businesses however they need to really expand their business, to grow, to improve their operations. And then what ultimately is happening as an outcome of that, Jay, is maybe the polar opposite of what the stigma might be when if private equity is involved. Is at one of the facilities, we're looking to create an entire second shift that didn't exist before. That's new jobs,
Yeah.
that's new opportunity, that's domesticating supply chains, as we had suggested before. And I hadn't looked at it necessarily that way. Had I heard some of those things before? Yep. But what I can tell you is, now that I'm in it, our ability to invest in these companies and keep them solid, put them in a position where they have the funds to be able to grow and the resources to be able to grow, and the guidance and the expertise, again, from somebody like Rick and Michael and Jonathan, who are part of our executive team, is exactly what we're attempting to do. And as you had suggested before, as we go out there and we find other really amazing companies that, for differing reasons, may be available to acquire, if they fit the mold of being this really advanced manufacturer, ability to hit these sophisticated production rates and tight tolerances, and we add them and we invest our time and resources into them, then they're only going to continue to flourish. I couldn't be more proud of what we do, but I couldn't be more excited for what we do.
Got a whole bunch of questions that follow up for you.
Yeah,
First
yeah,
of all, you were at MSC, I think, 23 years.
that's right. Yep.
It took a lot of courage, I would think, to leave. What made that happen? What gave you that courage?
Yeah, there was a part of me that I really believed in that those three items of improving productivity, revenue up, and profitability or competitiveness, that I was trying to do with machining businesses while I was at MSC. And when Rick approached me with the opportunity to do this, it gave me a chance to put my money where my mouth was and see if indeed that was the case. And to be able to influence that kind of change on the other side of the desk within a really great company like the folks that I was starting to meet at BTX, it gave me a brand new perspective and frankly, right now I'm learning a lot more, right? Than
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had at 20 after 23 years. I got to know quite a bit about MSC and about our processes, and maybe you don't learn as much as you're there longer and longer. And I came into this from being, one of the most reliable people at MSC that had a lot of answers to somebody at BTX that didn't have any. I'm just starting from square one. And
Yep.
7 weeks ago, I was like, oh my goodness, like I don't know anything, and that feels weird. And after 7 weeks of great folks that I've been able to rub elbows with and learn from and spend time with our business unit presidents and our
Hmm.
executive team and the machinists and the programmers and engineers, it's been fabulous. But I love every moment I spent with MSC. It made me so much of who I am and what I have and what I'm so fortunate to have been part of that organization. But I feel that way, working for Rick and with Rick McIntyre, as you outlined before, is just an exciting opportunity with an exciting company. And I couldn't pass up this chance to see what I could do on this side of the desk.
It was time.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tell me about Rick's background. What makes him exciting as a leader?
Yeah, Rick is one of those guys that we don't run into, and normal people don't run into that much. That he is maybe the smartest person I've ever met, and maybe the best communicator I've ever met. Those two things normally don't go too much
Right.
hand in hand. You find it from time to time, but when I'm saying that he may be the smartest person and maybe the best communicator, military background, so there's structure behind it
Mm.
all,
Yep.
as well as enthusiasm, competitiveness, teamwork, edge to him. Go ahead and, I hate to say it, but using a military vernacular, jump in the trenches, right, and go
Mhm.
and figure this out and work together to get it done. The chemistry that exists already within our executive leadership team, and I can speak for myself, and I'm sure my peers feel the same way with the business unit presidents that operate these businesses that we own. Rick has created this environment that, whether he purposefully did it, and I'm sure he did, like I said, that this chemistry that exists and these backgrounds of these people all mesh so well to create this great level of success. Rick and I met while he was the CEO of GWS, which many
Hmm.
know that Sandvik had Walter had purchased as a Sandvik AB company, and then recently had become GWS has become their own business unit, within the Sandvik family of businesses. So I think they have Seco, they have Dormer, Walter, and GWS kind of operates as their own business unit as well. And Rick led that for the better part of 5 or 7 years. And they were selling a lot of cutting tools, GWS was, and different products to MSC when I was in a leadership position there. And so I wasn't always responsible for the supplier relationships, maybe partially in some cases, but Rick and I got to meet many times. And I think he
Hmm.
saw something in me that he was like, man, if I could ever engage with that guy, like we could really do some cool things together. But I
Yeah.
certainly was thinking the same thing, when I witnessed him, and just, in doing things at such a young age that he was doing was just remarkable to me. And so when he called me or reached out to me in, I think it was March or April of this year, to say, hey, would you consider doing this? Those things came out in our conversation. He said, man, I've always wanted to work closely with you, and I really thought we could do some amazing things. And so I have this opportunity. Are you interested? Well, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, that dude, if I could ever work alongside him and we could make some real good happen. And it's been 7 weeks and we already are. So yeah, fantastic leader.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I don't want to get you too far ahead. There's three
Huh?
companies who make up BTX. There will be future acquisitions beyond a competency in that high precision machining. Again, you've been in a lot of shops. What's going to drive an actual acquisition as opposed to looking at someone and saying they aren't a good fit? What are the detractors? So, and where I'm coming from, Jamie, is
Mm-hmm.
I'm the owner of a shop. I don't have a succession plan, and it's time. So
Yep.
I'm interested in selling my shop. I want to protect my team who've been with me for a lot of years. So I could sell them to another shop owner. The PE thing sort of scares me, but as I've been listening, I like what BTX is doing. On the flip side, BTX or someone like you would have to like me.
Mhm.
What do I have to do to make myself attractive to beyond the competency, and I would assume making some money? Where do we go?
Yeah, yeah. So from our perspective, and we're open with the companies that we meet with, and that are in a spot similar to what you said. It might be a succession plan. It might be an industry that they had invested in equipment for that had slowed down, and there's some financial maybe challenges that exist. There's all different reasons why folks may be available, but really a symbiotic relationship, and one of those things could be several of those things I could note actually could be: one, are they involved in an end market that BTX right now isn't super strong in? Right, for instance, it may be an end market that's volatile, but we can offset it by being part of end markets already that aren't
Mhm.
very volatile. Like, we all know that aerospace and medical parts, the CAGR over the next 3 or 4 years is fabulous. And so if you're doing
Mhm.
those kind of businesses, that's great. And we have a big base in that kind of business. We're going to continue to grow. So maybe there's an end market that you can contribute to, or an end market that a shop is involved with that's accretive to what we do, in addition to what we do. Is
Real
there?
pointed,
Yeah. Yeah.
real pointed question. Again,
Mhm.
shop owner perspective, you used the term CAGR. What does
Oh
that mean?
yeah. Yeah, compounded annual growth rate. So, that these industries are expected to grow. I think aerospace, depending on some of the metrics you see, I think recently I had seen something in the 5 or 6% each year that industry is supposed to grow. So if it's who knows, a $1 trillion industry, a
Yeah.
trillion plus 6%, and then the next year a trillion plus 6%, and then another 6% on top of that, and that's some significant upside for all of these machining businesses. So that kind of stuff. They could have, like I said, a customer base. They could take on work for us with our existing customers. So
Mm.
we're looking for differentiated capabilities. So recently we have found some folks with some 5-axis water jet capabilities that are able to
Mm.
produce the most intricate little parts you've ever seen before. It could be even a level, high level of clean room capability. It could
Mhm.
be Swiss machines is something that
Gotcha.
we could stand to improve. So differentiated capabilities, and of course that baseline ability to do those very sophisticated and difficult parts are part of it. So those are just some of the early things. But having owners and leaders within the business that are just strong in their own right, both technically and business savvy and so on and so forth, that we can bring into our great team that we already have within the platform, and they would mesh well and they could work well together to collectively grow their business.
Are you expecting an owner to stay on for a while?
It depends. It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If there are leaders within that business that can serve as the primary point of contact, for that, or responsible for it, we refer to them as the business unit presidents. The owner doesn't necessarily have to stay on. I'm sure in most cases that owner is going to be involved, at least peripherally, for some time as the business transitions to us. I think it's worth noting that we don't, as much as we are integrated in our capability and our ability to cross sell these unique capabilities that all of these different businesses have, we don't come in as BTX and say, okay, you're going to operate this way, you're going to do these things, you're going to
Mhm.
use this system, you have to report,
Yep.
this way and that way. We buy these businesses when they're available because they're great in their own right. Right. And we want to keep them that way. Why come in and disrupt something? We're not going to buy a crappy company. You know what I mean? We're going to come in, we're going to buy a company that's available, that's really fantastic. And then why would we come in? But hey, there's this whole different level of support. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's technology, maybe it's,
Mhm.
supply chain stuff like we've talked about on this call, that we're in a position to support their future growth. And so that's exactly what we do. So I think our business units, or the acquired companies we have, I think they would all raise their hand and say, being, part of BTX has been fabulous so far.
So what I'm hearing is, if I'm an owner who I don't want to be active, I better have a good leadership team underneath me and not be a micromanager, because if I'm a micromanager and I don't have that strong leadership team, there is no one to take my place, and you would frustrate the hell out of BTX by
Mhm.
stepping away.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and I know, Jay, and you've exuded this in your career, that the best leaders are those ones that could walk away and there's everything is fine because you've built up a leadership team,
Right.
alongside you, we'll call it, that is able to handle anything and everything that comes at them. So I would agree with that sentiment completely.
I'm not sure how BTX operates. Sometimes PE firms do not buy 100% of a company. They'll buy, say, 80%, and then the existing shareholders would keep the 20%. And then at some period of time down the road, maybe it could be as short as, say, 4 or 5 years, maybe 8 or 10 years, the combined companies of BTX are sold and that 20% has increased in value. However, it's a way for the PE firm to ensure that there is an incentive for the owner to make the business keep operating as well as it has and hopefully better. And the PE firm, therefore, is willing to share the upside with the owner, that remaining 20%. Where does BTX fall in that? Do you buy 100%, or are you looking to have the owner retain a little bit?
I think that varies. I think with the consistent theme of what you said that's most important there is that there's always an incentive for that business to want to continue to flourish and get better and better,
Hmm.
not just for the financials of the organization, but for the betterment of their employees, for that community that they exist in, and so on and so forth. What you find, and again, all of your valued listeners, there's a brotherhood and a sisterhood and a communityhood within machining businesses where they care about their employees like no other
Yep.
businesses that I've ever seen. And so what we find is that level of care and concern for their employees usurps the dollars that they might make, but they want to make sure that these folks have jobs and well-paying jobs and stable jobs, for the foreseeable future. And I think that's what drives them. And when that happens, that's a means of an end for for a burgeoning financial success happens by virtue of those small steps that lead to that. And it's all about the employees, it's about the work, it's about serving your customers the best that we can, and then everybody makes out in that particular case throughout the entire organization.
Couple theoretical questions for you, more future, that you're a super smart guy. I want to get your input on. Before we go there, is there anything that we didn't cover, whether MSC or BTX or your background, that you think is important and you want to make sure that it gets out there?
What has crossed my mind, again, remember, I'm 7 weeks in being over
Hmm.
here, and I did find really quickly, as I said, that the care is about these driving factors of a commercial business that also improve the economic health of industry in the US. What I started to see at MSC and we're seeing at BTX and our companies right now, and I would encourage, and it doesn't have to be just through MSC, it could be through any outlet, is find a partner, find the time to consider the technological advances that are out there. Wrap your head around what's possible with AI. Wrap your head around what's possible with robots and cobots and automation, machine monitoring, all of these kinds of things. In the face of these primary concerns that machining businesses like us and like all the other ones have, they all can flourish by virtue of considering technology. And what I recognize is that many companies aren't big enough to have a technology person on staff, right? So somebody else
Right.
has to do that alongside their day job.
Yep.
But maybe you can find a supplier
Hmm.
that can lead you to the water, that knows your business enough that they can do that research for you and present to you, what might be possible in your respective facility that could transform the way you operate and make you a viable and thriving business for a long time. So I really think that technology, Jay, just continues. Nobody was talking about generative AI too much 2 years ago, and now you can't have a conversation with anybody without asking about Gen AI. It's just going to continue to exacerbate, and lest it sound like, but it's true. don't get too far behind either. So let it be a thing that is kind of, you know what, you have to do it at some point, but maybe start right now by really taking a close look at it, because there's some really fabulous things happening technologically in our industry that can serve to help every one of these folks that are listening to this call.
You actually got into where I wanted to go with my questions, and I think I want to hammer home what you just said is take tiny steps and look at your existing suppliers, and are they doing the heavy lifting for this AI revolution that is coming? Don't be scared of it. Let them, because they've got more resources and they've got the breadth of shops to explore this across. But find partners, suppliers who are making the investments, and listen to them, talk to them. One of the things that I always found valuable, and I always took the sales call of an MSC salesperson, was that they're sort of the honeybees of the industry. And I wanted to suck out of them as much information about what was going on in my industry, going on in other shops, that I could, so I wasn't blindsided, but also potentially put in place myself, things that I wasn't thinking about. And obviously, with paperless parts, we are implementing very conservatively and cautiously, because we have to, AI in the background. And one of the things, though, where AI has already made a difference is in how we are able to interpret some of the information on 2D prints, which has always been a huge stumbling block, a manual quoting task. And the more that we can automate that, and AI is actually a great way to do it, those are the types of implementations that are happening. And maybe you don't have to know about it as a shop owner. However, you want to feel confident that your supply base is actually using those resources to the fullest that they can today. Jamie, I want to go way out. I don't know if have you seen any videos of the Tesla Optimus robot, the humanoid robot?
I have not. I have not.
So this is, I love exponential technologies, and the humanoid robot is Tesla's version's called the Optimus. There's a lot of other companies out there. There's one called Figure that's pretty capable. Tesla will have these humanoid robots operating in their plant by the end of the year. They expect by the end of 2025 to have over 1,000 in their manufacturing facilities. And I just wrote a blog post on it. I think the humanoid robots are they are a blind spot for us right now. They're going to come into place so fast, because it used to be, as you probably saw, robots always had to be programmed for the task at hand. And if you can verbally or writtenly communicate in human language the task to the robot, or show them through videos, through what I say is the software side of robots, that constraint is gone. And now we have to solve, which is being solved, the hardware constraint of robots, the dexterity of the human hand. However, I look at it as the training data for that software side, as well as the world is built for our form factor. And when I mean form factor, the world is built for people. So if we build robots who function like people, humanoid robots, they can easily adapt into our world. So threw a bunch of stuff out there. You haven't seen the Optimus yet. Any comments?
Well, first of all, that'll be the first thing I do when we stop this call, is I'm going to go and watch some videos and get myself more knowledgeable on it. You know, one of the things, and this is probably, I don't think as much for the shop owners and shop folks that would listen to this as maybe the general public, is you had heard this concern that robots are going to take jobs, right? And what I heard you saying is, as much as this might do things that a human can do, it's more or less somewhat of the menial labor type stuff that you wouldn't want a human doing anyway, right? And so these robots don't program themselves, and so maybe I'm a 13 or 15-year-old kid that's trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, but I love computers and I love video games, and shoot, maybe programming
Mhm.
robots is something I should look into. And maybe it's a 2 or 3 year degree that you have to get, and you're doing some really cool stuff. Is the things that come to my mind when I think about the advanced robotics that are happening out there.
What I'm saying, Jamie, is that that job won't exist. You, meaning Jamie, will be able
Yep.
to say to the robot, go to this Haas milling machine and load this job into the
Yep.
machine, set it up, grab the right vise, the tooling. Now, this is way down the road. Right now, the
Sure.
demonstration of the Tesla robots is taking battery components and putting them into trays. However, I see a really huge opportunity is for the humanoid robots to be an assistant in the home. And
Hmm.
why that's important is the number of people who are not working, who have valuable skills and experience, but they have to be at home as a caretaker because there is no one else, or financially
Yep.
it's not viable to hire someone. Putting them back into the workforce at least part of the time and having a humanoid robot companion, this is where I think we are at the cusp of something really exciting happening. And as you're saying, it's not replacing people per se, it's opening them up to do more value added tasks.
Yeah, definitely, and it might change the topic just a slight bit, but I'm fortunate to work alongside some really great manufacturing leaders where human language interface. We have a group that I work alongside within the National Science Foundation called Cyber Physical Systems, that we try
Mm,
to identify the things that happen in the physical world and combine that with what's possible in the cyber world,
yeah.
and improve manufacturing, durable goods manufacturing in the US. It's a really intriguing team to be part of, and I'm fortunate to be there. But the human language interface, at just at CNC
Yes.
machines, like, hey,
Yes.
make this offset X,
Yes.
Y, Z, whatever number, blah, 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 and it just does it, right? It's
Hmm.
not too far off. And you're talking about it with robots and saying, hey, I want you to go to this machine and I want you to do this, that, and the other. And we've had those conversations, and it's not too far.
Well, Jamie, this has been a really fun conversation. Thanks for making the time today. I think you have given the listeners a lot to think about and a positive path forward. That you you didn't have to leave MSC. You had security there. And what I hear when I listen to you is that you think that there's so much opportunity on the application side that this is an exciting time for manufacturing, and it was worth the jump. Thank you for sharing your insights there, and I wish you all the best in what you're doing.
Yeah, listen, like I said at the outset, it was going to be my pleasure, and it was my pleasure to spend time with you, Jay. You're a fantastic leader in the industry, trailblazer in a number of different ways, and for any ways that any of us can contribute to the improvements, in the economic wherewithal by virtue of manufacturing in the U.S. There's nothing more, besides my family, that I care about in this world, is to see this manufacturing industry continue to flourish, and it's right there at our fingertips. It's for the taking, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be part of it. And I appreciate you having me on, Jay. I really do.
Someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way? Where can they find you?
They can find me at btxprecision.com, or specifically my email address is jgoettler at btxprecision.com. Happy to engage, happy to talk with you, offer advice, guidance, support, whatever it might be. But thank you for that opportunity and this opportunity to spend time with you, Jay.
Again, thank you, Jamie. You're a rock star.
Thanks, buddy.
And if you're listening, I'm trying to think of the takeaway, and usually I try to give you a real specific takeaway. And I think today it's maybe just take 15 minutes, 30 minutes, put your feet up on the desk and think about the future. It is so bright. And what's something that you could do in your shop? And maybe it's not even in your shop. Maybe there's a conversation to have. Maybe it's a conversation with Jamie. Reach out and grasp the future. Don't fall behind. It's exciting. Until next time, keep those lasers cutting and those spindles turning. Have a fantastic day. Thanks for listening to the Job Shop Show podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. You can also leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Not only do I read every single one, it also helps me understand what content matters most to you. Thanks again for listening to the Job Shop Show.